Author C.S. Lewis's imaginative, theologically rich fantasy series, The Chronicles of Narnia, are some of the most cherished and beloved books really ever written. But despite that, it's actually been a while since audiences have been able to experience those stories play out, up on the big screen. The last theatrical film came back in 2010 with the underperforming The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which was an adaptation of the third book in the series, or the fifth book if you're one of those weird people who prefer the chronological order over the objectively better published order. Yet, as many of you probably already know, the wait is almost over as new adaptations are currently being developed at Netflix from Barbie director Greta Gerwig. Now, despite being someone who was quite critical of the Barbie movie, I've been trying to remain cautiously optimistic about these films, and even of Gerwig in the director's chair. But unfortunately, it seems like every new reveal or news to come out about these films has just crushed my enthusiasm a little bit more. First, there was producer Amy Pascal sharing in an interview that Greta's approach to the Narnia films will be, quote, a very new take that is, quote, all about rock and roll. And there are many descriptions that could be used to describe the Narnia stories, but rock and roll should probably never be one of them. Even so, call me a fool, but I hadn't given up all of my hope. But today may have finally changed that. Because earlier today, Deadline released a new exclusive article with the title, Meryl Streep in talks to play Aslan in Greta Gerwig and Netflix Narnia movie. And in the article, it reveals that, as confirmed by their sources, Oscar winner Meryl Streep is in fact in talks to voice Aslan, although her contract has not yet been signed. And the article goes on to say, quote, in the novels, Aslan is a talking lion who serves as Narnia's guardian and a guide for the human children. Generally portrayed as a male, Aslan was created as an allegory for Jesus by author C.S. Lewis. And the burning question that needs to be asked about all of this is just, are we really doing this? As we all know, in the last series of adaptations, Aslan was voiced wonderfully by actor Liam Neeson, which is really one of the universally praised aspects of those films. Meryl Streep, obviously she's a wonderful actress, but casting her as Aslan, to me, just raises some serious questions about Netflix and Gerwig's entire approach to these films. For example, despite the Deadline article suggesting, quote, Aslan was created as an allegory for Jesus, that is not actually true, because in the mind of Lewis, Aslan was not some sort of archetypal, metaphorical representation of Jesus. He was, in fact, intended to be the person of Jesus himself. And in an often quoted letter that he wrote to a young fan, he once said, quote, I don't say, let us represent Christ as Aslan. I say, supposing there was a world like Narnia, and supposing, like ours, it needed redemption, let us imagine what sort of incarnation and passion and resurrection Christ would have had there. In other words, more than merely gender swapping some sort of guardian figure, the decision is essentially gender swapping Jesus, which any way you look at it, just seems like a totally awful idea. And if the film does indeed follow through with this idea, I also just think it would be a catastrophic and almost shockingly bad unforced error. Because obviously, a lot of mainstream audiences are at least somewhat familiar with the Narnia stories, and Greta Gerwig has a lot of cultural cred these days in Hollywood after the immense success of Barbie. But I think in order for these films to really succeed, they just need to land well with Christian audiences. And I just can't think of many things that the film could do to more ostracize and turn Christian audiences against it than gender swapping Jesus. It's bizarre to me too, because it just seems like such a blatant case of just not properly reading the room. Because while I was personally a bit more positive towards the recent live action Snow White adaptation, as many people were, that film was a massive box office bomb, in large part because it took a revisionist take on a classic story. And for many audiences, it just seemed to add validity to the narrative that Hollywood is just ideologically driven to update classic stories with modern philosophies that were really fine the way they were. Now, of course, the deal with Meryl Streep is not yet finalized, so there still is time for Netflix to change course on this. But honestly, I think even if they do ultimately listen to the criticism and instead, bring in a male voice actor for Aslan, maybe even bring Neeson back, I still think just the very fact that Gerwig was ever seriously considering, this casting at all, just gives us a glimpse of the overall philosophy being taken towards these adaptations, and it's not a very encouraging sign. And I still want these films to be great, and I really hope that they are, but perhaps as a fellow Christ-like guardian Gandalf the Grey once said, there never really was much hope, only a fool's hope. But anyways, I would love to hear what you guys think of the news. Do you share my concerns about this potential casting? Or hey, are you okay with the idea of like a female Aslan? Let's all be respectful, but go ahead, jump into the comment section. Let's have a conversation about it. If you haven't done so too, I encourage you guys, become a Collider, subscribe to the channel, got lots of other movie reviews, got our Faith and Pop Culture podcast, got interviews, just other fun stuff. Would love to have you guys be a part of that. But most of all, guys, thank you for watching, stay safe, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.